Welcome back. This is going to be Morphology Part 2. Well, we already talked about the different classifications. Shalem, first Aleph, first Nun, first Yud, the first Ayin and Chet gutturals, the second Ayin and Chet gutturals, the Yud and the Vavs, both the U and the O, the third Aleph, the third Ayin and Chet, the third Hey, and lastly, the doubling of the last root letters in the second and third position. So in this one, we're actually going to give an example so that we can become very clarified in our mind as to how this is going to work. Okay? So let's go down here and remember what we're talking about. I said to you before, that in the roots you have three positions, because all Hebrew roots predominantly are three root letters. So we're looking for the first, the second, and the third. The first is going to be the first letter that's actually in the root. Okay? So for Shalem, the Shalem is going to be all the letters that exclude Aleph, Ayin and Chet, Hey, Nun, Yud, and of course Vav. And that is what our Shalem is going to be. Okay, so it means any root that has these root letters excluding the ones I just mentioned, these are all called Shalem, or whole root verbs, or also known as strong verbs. And why are they known as strong verbs? Well, these verbs are going to be ones by which the whole root remains intact and visible throughout all other morphologies. That means whether I'm using the Hefil form, the PO form, the Hitpa'al form, no matter what form I'm going to be utilizing, the root will stay clear and visible. So I'll give you an example of this. Shin, Pei, and Chaf Sofit. So Shin, Pei, Chaf Sofit is a visible root. That means that once this root goes into any morphology chart, whether it's going to be in the Hefil form, the PO form, the Nefil form, I'm going to see Shin, Pei, Chet all the time. Every single time I utilize it, whether it's past, whether it's future, whether it's causative form, whether it's intensified form, whether it's a passive form, it doesn't matter. This root is always going to remain visible. And so therefore it makes it quite easy to know what the word is, because when you identify the root and you know what the root means, you could translate this word pretty quickly. Let's give you another example. Kaf, Resh, Bet. So here, Resh, Bet, this is going to be visible throughout the time period of you writing this root. And also, lastly, we'll do another one. Zayin, Kof, Nun, Sofit. Zakan, okay? This root will be visible all the time. Now, the chart that I gave that's on the website, it has some things that are kind of intertwined. So once I fix up some of the parts that I did, I'll completely make sure that every single thing that doesn't have any kind of weak root inside these roots here. It's a large conglomeration that I put together, but however, you can see majority of the stuff that's on there perfectly flows within these charts. Some of the charts have other things in it, and it's only because I was working on some parts with regard to it. But enjoy the list. It's free. You can download it. You can put it on your computer. You can use it for yourself. This is just to help you grow in your biblical Hebrew rather than having to use a dumb dictionary to find out what the word is or what a word is. And also helps build your vocabulary, because it's just based upon only using roots. It's based upon just using the verb roots and the forms that are utilized. I want you to understand something very important here, which you need to understand. Even though the Bible may not use, for example, a verb in the he feel form, doesn't mean that it cannot exist in the he feel form. So this is something we have to understand, is that all the forms that we have when we were talking about the he feel, the pl, the nifal, hitpal, it's possible that most of these roots can fit into each of these specific morphology areas, also known as the classifications or the binyanim. And these specific things can be utilized. So whether or not you see it, it doesn't really fully matter. If it doesn't exist in the Bible, you can utilize it and it still exists, with the fact that you can use these causative or the PO forms. So let's look at going over to the first aleph and get some examples here. Here we have aleph, shin, and mem sufit. Notice aleph is in my first position. Therefore, I know that with looking at this, that this belongs to this chart. So when I look up, if I download, for example, the Pa'al charts, and I want to look up how to vocalize a specific verb root, I'm going to first ask myself, is it Pa'al, PL, Nifil, Hefil, Hitpa'al, Hofal, or Pu'al? And once I know which one I'm going to be utilizing, I will then look for the specific chart that's utilized with that root. So therefore I know, because the aleph is in the front of the root, I'm going to be using the aleph chart. Let's look at another one. Aleph, Hey, and Bet. Now I threw this in here because this happens a lot of times. You're going to find roots that happen to be a little funky here, because you're going to say, what do I do? Well, you're going to find a lot of times roots are going to fulfill the first requirement, which is going to be putting it in just the basic Pa'al form of the past tense. But the future tense might be a little tricky. So therefore, we have to understand the fact that when we're dealing with this issue of putting a future tense, notice the hey, which here, if we look over here, this would be regarded as the second guttural. And that means that it's going to need a vowel sound underneath it. So if I utilize the second guttural chart as to the vowel sound that would be utilized for the hey, that's what's going to be placed underneath it. And this is one of the things that gets kind of like difficult at times, is because you find a lot of roots that you're saying, wait a second, that's the first nun, but then I got a yud, what do I do with that? Or these are the things that are just one of the parts where we just have to grow and learn a lot more, step by step, and how to vocalize. As new charts are produced for those who are very special and unique to the actual normalcy of these charts, they will be published and put on the site. But for the things that are there, enjoy, and please, by all means, you can print off and create a whole list of vocabulary for yourself. Aleph, Zadi, Resh. Once again, you can see the aleph is present. Let's do it for the nun. Nun, Gimel, Dalet. Once again, I know you can sit there and say, okay, this makes a lot of sense. I get this part. Every time I'm looking for the first, I'm looking for the first letter. Therefore, that nun, which is in that first position, is telling me that this is the chart that I'm going to utilize. And that's exactly how this is all about. That's why this video was made, in addition to the video I made previous, to give you a more detailed scene of what you're going to be looking for as you accomplish more of learning how to use these charts, and especially knowing how to visualize it for yourself before you actually start freaking out thinking, maybe I didn't understand this completely, or maybe I didn't really get what he was saying. So I want to make it clear so you can understand for yourself here. Nun, Dalet, Resh. Once again, you can see the nun is present. Nun, Tav, Resh. So as you can see, I'm going to go fill out the rest of these as you begin to look at that just pay close attention to the fact that, noticing the fact, very simply, the nun is in the first position. One thing I want to share with you, the fact of I put dots in between each root. This is to signify, to understand that we're looking at a 3-root letter, and we're looking at the root by which we are going to be understanding. In your dictionaries, if you're to be looking them up, well, these dots would be missing, and you just find the nun, the tav, and the resh that would be there. Some great dictionary to use that you can get more familiar with and to understand the fact of how roots are worded. Davidson's a good dictionary, works on the root system. So if you know roots, you look in the Davidson dictionary and you begin to actually look up the root itself, and then of course the nouns and all the adjectives and what other word is actually created from that root, you're going to find connected actually underneath the actual root itself. Yud, Zayin, Nun. Yud, Shin, Bet. Yud, Dalet, Ayin. Once again, you could see the Ayin is present at the end, and here you would say, well, wait a second here, we have a third Ayin. So you're going to have to see that you're going to see part of the vowelization is going to be connected to the third Ayin in order to incorporate the Ayin at the end when used in the future tense. However, when used in the regular, if all of these verbs are pa'al, you'll see that all of them carry the exact same vocalization over and over again in the pa'al forms in the past tense. Ayin, Bet, Resh. So you can see the Ayin is in the first position. The Bet and the Resh is just the second root letters and third. Ayin, Bet, Daled. Once again, the Ayin is the first position. Chet, Kaf, Mem Sofit. So Ayin and Chet, you know, are gutturals, and it just reminds you of the fact because they're in the first position, we're going to be using this exact chart. Chet, Mem, Daled. Now for the second gutturals. Tet, Hey, Resh. Notice we're looking for the second root letter because now we're in the second position, which is this position right here. Resh, Chet, Bet. Now the Chet we see is in the second position. Bet, Hey, Lamed. Now we see the Hey in the second position. And lastly, Kof, Hey, Nun. So Kaf, Hey, Nun, we see the Hey is in the second position. Now we're going to go to the Yud and Vavs. So Bet, Vav, Aleph. We see the Vav is in the second position. These are the words by which the middle root letter disappears. Okay? And what we see these things is these words have a lot of changes that take place in the past tense, and you'll see that in the past tense chart. If you actually go and open up the Pa'al chart and look up the Yud, Vav, and both the Vav, the U and the O sound of the second position, you're going to notice how in the past tense there's a change, there's a weakness. So these are actually called, if you want to understand, they're literally called weak roots because they disappear. Nun is a weak root letter. The Vav and the Yud are weak root letters, and also the Hey is a weak root letter. And the reason why we say they're weak is because when we're actually looking at the chart of the vowelization for future and past, we notice that in the past tense that these root letters disappear and they have no ability of showing up. So we're stuck with two root letters, and so we have to kind of memorize how the Vav and Yud roots work before we begin to start kind of wondering, well, I don't know how to find the root. So we learn these charts, we begin to become more familiarized with how these root letters work. Mem, Vav, Gimel. Sin, Yud, Mem Sofit. So we can see we have U, up here we have the O, and we have the Yud, which are in these root letters in the middle, and of course they're going to be weak. So Shin, Gimel, Aleph, you see the Aleph is at the end, so it needs to be vocalized differently, because when it's put in that morphology chart, we're going to notice that we cannot vocalize it properly without incorporating the fact that the Aleph at the end needs to have some kind of vowel sound. And that's why this chart was made and is made specifically for the Aleph letters. And then of course we have Zayin, Bet, Chet. Here we're looking at the last root letter, where the Chet is placed in the last root part. Resh, Gimel, Ayin, we see once again in the third root letter. Pei, Gimel, Ayin, we see the Ayin in the third root letter. And then of course lastly we see Chet in the last root letter. So now we got left over is we have the third, cut this off here a little bit, write this back up here. So now we got the third Hey, and the last is the third, which and the second root letter is next. So here we got Bet, Nun, Hey, Kaf, Lamed, Hey, Resh, Aleph, Hey, and Kof, Resh, Hey. Notice how in this one we have the Aleph, which here we know is a guttural letter, so we're going to see that there's going to be a vowelization change by which they're going to be incorporating the guttural in order for it to have a vowel, which normally these other ones might not even need the vowel when we're looking at the future tense. And then lastly we're looking at the germinant. The germinant, like I said, these are the ones by which the root letters are all the same in the end. There's a doubling of these root letters. And the doubling tells us that these root letters are very special and belong to this very chart. So we have Bet, Daled, Daled, Lamed, or Hey, Lamed, Lamed, Kof, Tav, Tav, and Gimel, Nun, Nun, Sofit. So we see that these two letters, they fit the third and second root category. We see that Hey follows the third segment of the category here. We see the same thing with the Ayin and the Chet, the gutturals, which fit in the third, as well as the Aleph. These are all in this position here, so I know that's in the third position. Where when I go to the second position, I'm looking for the letters that are in between the first and the third root letter. And so that's what we're going to see in the seconds, as well as when we go to the first, we're going to be looking for all the first roots. And of course, the Shalem, they all stay intact. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope this has really helped you understand how to use the charts and how to properly take those very words that you're seeing here as an example and putting them properly on the chart so that you can vowelize your Hebrew future, past tense, he-fil, P-il, ni-fil, whatever it is that you're going to be utilizing morphology-wise. You can vowelize it properly and put it right in the right charts, and you can go on your way and build vocabulary. We'll see you around.